But for now, let's flip this camera around and start to tell you about the beautiful city that's behind me right now. Melbourne, Australia is in the southeast of Australia in the state of Victoria. We are a city of 5 million people. We have the beautiful Yarra River overlooking us right here with the Prince's Bridge, the oldest bridge in the city center. There we go, that's our focus there. And it's a beautiful, serene morning, bright and early at 7 a.m. right here. Australia, if you're not familiar, is a vast, empty country. We are a country the size of the USA, but with a population of a little bit more than the New York metropolitan area. And so most of the country is empty, except for cities like this one right here. Population of Australia is 26 million people. The population of Melbourne is 5 million. The population of Sydney is 10 million. So we're already over 2/3 of the, 1/3 of the population from just our two major cities. So in Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide, and you've got the bulk of the population. The middle of Australia is vast and empty for the most part. And so it's a pretty exciting place to be in our city centers. If you ever make it down to Australia, most people will take a trip up to the outback, go to Uluru in the center of the country, then they'll go to a few of our cities. And I hope that you will come on over here to Melbourne someday. Hello, Kristen from Texas. Now guys, this is interactive. I am a tour guide by trade, but I'm a person. So I do these tours, you know, looking at faces and all that. And since we don't have that, it would help me tremendously if you would interact with me. Let me know what questions you have. Don't worry about interrupting my stories. I tell these stories all the time. I want to know your reactions, what you're interested in. In the meantime, if you are enjoying this, there are a few ways that you can show your appreciation. The first and best way to show it, you see the share button down below? Just click that. Click that right now, share this out with your friends. We want Facebook to start pushing these videos out so we can get the most number of people to see our city. SANDEMANs is doing videos like this around the world. And so it's super helpful if you share. Likes are great too, but also what's really great is comments. So we love comments like Kyle's right there that I just see here asking me how long I've been in Melbourne. I first came here in 2012. I moved here permanently in 2016, and I should get my Australian citizenship anytime now. I lodged my citizenship application back in November. So we love questions, love interactions, and finally, if you really love it, you really want to help me out, we operate like all the SANDEMANs tours on a pay what you feel basis. So if you do like this tour, there is a link down below in the description for you guys watching on a SANDEMANs stream, where you can go pay what you think it's worth. All that money comes to me as an independent tour guide struggling my way through COVID. So I'd love if you could do that, but also only if you can afford it. The main thing is enjoy this video. This is yours. This is guilt-free watching, people. Hello to the Netherlands, Suzanne. Thank you so much for watching. I should collaborate with Ben. I know Ben Webster. Yeah, Ben Webster is one of the big pub guides down over here. All right, so having a look into our city center, let's tell you a little bit about this city. Now, we're crossing the Yarra River, and back in 1835, this is where the Enterprise landed by John Pascoe Faulkner. He's a Tasmanian who came and settled this place along with John Batman. Our early history of Melbourne has these two men sniping to take land, which is not really either one of theirs. It's Aboriginal lands. One of the interesting things about all the land you see when you're in Australia is that this is a country that has never had its land ceded or negotiated with the Aboriginal Australians. In fact, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this tour is taking place, the Wurundjeri people, and pay respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. If you've not heard this, this means you're probably not in Australia. But in Australia, we do this a lot to try to acknowledge that the land and the history that we have here is troubled, to say the least. And we're trying everything we can for reconciliation. Famously, in 2007, the Prime Minister of Australia ran a campaign, became Prime Minister under the campaign promise of apologizing for the wrongdoings of the Australian government in the past. It's a fascinating and controversial moment, but National Sorry Day is still something we talk about here in Australia all the time. So, it's a little bit dead right now. Like I said before, it is early. It is 7:15 on a Sunday morning, so I don't know who in their right mind is up right now, unless you're like me, trying to appeal to you Americans and Europeans watching. We wanted to put this live stream at a time when you guys might be watching it, but it means that you're gonna see a city by the crowds. And so we can see all around us here, we have Federation Square over this way. That's our main public square. Built in 2002, opened in 2002. A bit controversially, people thought it was a strange looking series of buildings, especially because it was built across from some of our most historic and most beautiful buildings. For example, let's have a look over here. Hi Patricia from Peru, thank you so much for joining. Let me know what questions you have about Melbourne as we make our way through. But over here, we have St. Paul's Cathedral. This is the Anglican Church. This is an English colony when it first begins in 1835. And so the English, of course, put their church, the Church of England, in the very center of the city. The Catholics, they've got to move way outside the city center. And so what we do is we build this church, but you'll notice something very interesting about it with the rock. Can you notice right here, the stone from here down to here is like a paler color than the stone from here up to here? That's because when the church was first built, it didn't have steeples. The steeples were built long after the church was erected, 80 years actually, and they had to get sourced stone from a different place. So that's our beautiful church in the center. Our other beautiful church is St. Patrick's, just outside the city center, the Catholic Church. Hello, David from Barcelona. Beautiful. And also John from Toronto, and Shannon. Thanks for tuning in yet again from Ontario. You know, St. Paul's Cathedral over there. Meanwhile, we have the Young and Jackson pub over here. And this is a beautiful Victorian pub, but probably the best known and loved building in this area is this Flinders Street Station. They're actually doing this whole activation in Melbourne because we had this massive lockdown. If you're not aware, we had some of the most restrictive lockdowns in the world here in Melbourne. For 111 days allowed to leave our houses. It was a bit intense, to be totally honest with you. We could only leave our house for essential services, for groceries, for urgent medical care, or for exercise, but only for 2 hours a day and only 5 kilometers from our house. It ended up being quite a dramatic period of time that essentially eliminated COVID. We've had almost a week now of COVID-free in the entire state of Victoria. And so that's why you see me walking around without a mask. Now I have one with me. The mask is right here for public transportation or for groceries, but for the most part, we don't need to carry it around. This is what the future could look like. And so we're kind of figuring out what life is like in our post-COVID city right now. Now behind me is that beautiful set of clocks I was just showing you. Let me get a closer look at it. There's an expression, and the expression is "meet me under the clocks." And now it's actually "meet me by the little heart" because they've activated all these local florists to make these displays to encourage people from the suburbs to come and check out Melbourne. Excuse me. But as I come over and look at this blue historic plaque here, the blue plaque, you'll notice even right here, it says, "Under the clocks." And what that means is that if you want to meet somebody in Melbourne, a good meeting spot is underneath all of these things. Now, each one of these clocks tells you a departure time for a different train line. So I live on the Werribee line right here. And so I need to go at 12 o'clock. You know, that's because the Werribee line is down today. They actually have rail replacement service, a term that will strike fear into the heart of any Brits watching right now. Upfield line is also under service at Broadmeadows line. If I want to get the Broadmeadows train, I can see when its departure is going to be, which also looks broken. My God, all of our clocks are not performing to us today. Sandeman, that clock seems to be working. The Sandeman line is going to be leaving at, oh my gosh, 4, no, 8, these are all wrong. These clocks are broken. Under normal rush hour conditions, you would see all the clocks telling you what time each train is going to leave. You'd compare it to the clock up at the top, which is today's time. But today, it's Sunday. They're asleep at the wheel at Flinders Street Station, apparently. So we'll make our way back from Flinders Street Station, and I'll give you a great view of this whole building. When it opened, it was the largest train station and busiest train station in the entire world. You can see all the way to the clock tower over there in the dome. Look, we don't have the Sydney Opera House. We don't have the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Sydney is a flashier city in terms of things to see. Melbourne likes to make it a little bit harder over here. So, hey Joel, thanks for coming on our tours. Appreciate your support. Yeah, Emmanuel, you guys are still on Saturday. We are in the tomorrow times over here. International datelines are a wonderful thing. And so we always get to be in the future. We're the first place on New Year's Eve that all the fireworks go off on. And so if you have any questions about what tomorrow is going to be like, please do let me know. Now, if you've been to Australia before and you did anything interesting here, especially if you've been to Melbourne, please let me know. I'd love to know what your guys' experiences are with Australia. Australia is a country that has 13 million international visitors a year, and we have a population of 26 million. So we are a country that is very, very used to having our guests coming to say hello, coming to see us, which means that we're kind of uniquely affected by COVID, which is a shame. We're hopefully going to be able to start to bounce back once international travel resumes, but probably not for a while yet. Joey from Minnesota, back again for more. I love it. Thank you for tuning in. Now, one of the key things I always tell people when you're walking down Melbourne is if you find yourself on a street like this, Swanston Street, you are doing Melbourne wrong. What we want to do is stay off these streets. Look, Subway, 7-Eleven. Does this look like a kind of authentic Australian experience? No, of course not. So what we want to do is we want to look left, look for our smaller streets. Now the small streets here, this is called Flinders Lane, are 33 feet from end to end, just like that. Whereas the larger streets, like Swanston Street, are 99 feet from end to end. The idea with this, when Robert Hoddle designed our city grid, was he wanted to make it so that a 16-horse carriage could make a U-turn. Do you know how we say make a U-turn in Australian? Chuck a Yui. If you ever want to sound Australian, you need to make a U-turn, say, let's go chuck a Yui up ahead. And so the 16-horse carriage would chuck a Yui over this way. We don't want to be on Swanston Street. We want to come over here to Flinders Lane. It's a little bit smaller, and this is where you're going to find that feeling of being more properly in Melbourne. One of my favorite things about Melbourne is that we have more cafes per capita than anywhere else in the world. We love coffee in this city. Our coffee is damn good, if I do say so myself. It comes from the Italians. Italians came over during World War II and they brought their amazing coffee with them. And so I'm just going to show you a few of the cafes. Now, it is early and it is on a Sunday. Here in Australia, if you're an employer and you want to employ people on a Sunday, you have to pay them 1.5 times their normal wage because we are a country that very much believes in work balance. And so that means that a lot of the cafes on a Sunday will be closed. And if they do open, they're going to open at 9 or 10 when people actually get up out of bed and make their way down here. We're not like those Germans in northern Germany who are up at the crack of dawn here. We like to take things a little bit easier here in Melbourne. Hey Daniel, thanks for commenting. I'd love to see you in Australia as well, saying he always wants to come visit Australia. I hope you make it here someday. Now, as I flip our camera around, you'll see the first cafe. And I want to demonstrate for you the cafe scene is like here. So see this coffee cup here? That is Duke's Coffee Roasters. It's one of the great coffee roasteries here. Not quite open yet. It'll be open, I believe, at 9 o'clock. Now you can go to Duke's Coffee Roasters. Have a great coffee over there. But if you don't want that one, you can go to here, Brunetti. You see Brunetti right there? They do these amazing coffees and cakes over there. But say that's a bit too fancy, a bit too big for you, then you just make your way across the street to the library. Here's our city library up here. And in the library we have Journal Cafe. See Journal right there? So that cafe will be open Monday to Friday. And if we don't like that cafe, then look over here. We have RMB Cafe over on the corner there. Not like Germany to get up early, Michaela, huh? That wasn't my experience when I was in Berlin. Not so much like the Bavarians, but the northern Germans I found were very industrious getting up. But I could be wrong. I only was there for a few weeks a year for about 3 years. Now this is De Grave Street, so lots more cafes this way. Each one of those ovals is a cafe, basically. And if we don't like any of those cafes, we just cross the street over here and we have Centro Espresso Coffee. Now look, all things being equal, I would prefer to be showing you all this while all of these grates are open, which they will be in just a few hours. But it's a little bit of a game for us of figuring out a balancing act between being available at a time when you guys are awake or showing you the things that are open. So we decided to go for when you're awake. But in just a few hours, all of these grates will open up. It'll be a really kind of amazing sight to see here as people come and get their Sunday morning coffees and cafe and get brekkie. Brekkie is what we call breakfast over here. So that is Center Place. This is my favorite laneway in Melbourne. Hey Sylvia, from Greece it looks like, according to that flag. Very nice to see you. Parakalor. Now, Melbourne, city of laneways. So as a city here, we have this city grid. Sydney is one of the last medieval cities in the world, which means the city literally built by accident. They put up a house and another convict put up another house, and over time they connected them with streets. That's as opposed to Melbourne, because look at how straight our streets are. We have this perfect city grid here in Melbourne. Very perpendicular and parallel lines in our city center, and that's what means. That's what makes it that we have these small, narrow laneways. And in Melbourne, you always want to be exploring our laneways. You see amazing bits of street art, like this one, right over here, when you're walking around, and also hidden bars, cafes, and the rest. Now the questions are coming in hot, which I love. Please keep your questions coming. Let me make sure I don't miss any. Shannon says, been to Sydney and saw snow in August. So crazy, would love to see Melbourne. I bet you were up in the Blue Mountains maybe. You went up to the mountain regions over there. Pretty rare for Sydney, the city, to get snow. Bob is asking me, why are flat whites so popular in Australia? We are a city that loves our coffee. It's an excellent question, and thank you for it. We have these Italians who came down here, brought their coffee, but if you get a coffee in Italy, get a cappuccino in 2021, it's gonna taste the same as the coffee in 1921. We're remarkably consistent with our coffee around here. But here in Italy, I should say, here in Melbourne, we're not afraid to change. And so a flat white is kind of a new take on a cappuccino. It's a flat layer of foam at the top. It's the same ingredients as a cappuccino, so espresso and milk, steamed to perfection. If you're a barista in Melbourne, you have to be really good. Most baristas will have gone to a course. You can get a certificate in being a barista or being an apprentice. You can make $40 an hour being a barista. Life is good for baristas here. We'll get 2 or 3 coffees a day. And to give you some evidence of how much coffee culture is a part of Melbourne culture, I want to show you what I have in my bag right now. We're a very kind of eco-conscious city. And so we realized a few years back that we were producing enough waste to fill an entire tram car every 30 minutes here in Melbourne. So we started carrying these around with us. This is a Keep Cup. It is a cup invented by a couple of Melbourne baristas, and it's invented 2 Melbourne barista standards. So it's a glass cup that I take with me everywhere I go, and then that's what I pop my coffee into. I'll have 2 or 3 coffees a day, generally. And now I don't need to worry about those single-use paper cups, which are not recyclable, so not fantastic for the earth around here. Let's see over here what other questions we have in. So we had the flat white already. Now let me know, what are your favorite coffees? Is a flat white your favorite? Because here in Melbourne, the coffee names are a bit different. You have the flat white, the long black, the latte, the cappuccino. Let's do this. Coffee lesson from Melbourne. The latte, the cappuccino, and the flat white, they're all the same thing. It's all espresso and milk. It's all just about the difference in foam. The long black is what everywhere else in the world calls an Americano. But the difference is that an Americano has espresso with hot water splashed on top of it. But that splashing of the hot water on top of it, that's gonna eliminate the crema, that light brown layer on the top of the espresso. So we put the espresso on after the hot water and call it a long black, which is separate from a short black. A short black is an espresso everywhere else in the world. So those are our main kind of coffees that you can get here. If you get milk, you can get regular milk, skinny milk, soy milk, almond milk, oat milk. No one's gonna bat an eye at you. So let me know in the comments below what your Melbourne coffee order would be if you came down here. I'd love to see what you have to say In the meantime, let me catch up with my questions that have come through. So at 3:25 on a Saturday in Lima, wanting an Australian coffee. Beautiful. I hope you can make it down here for an Australian coffee. I'm pretty sure Lima's got some pretty good coffee as well, though. Hello to Teague as well, and to Arena in Canada. Let's see, up in Jindabyne. Oh, that's Shannon telling us where she went to see the snow over in Sydney and Norway as well. First foreign city you visited. That's awesome. So happy to have you back. And Suzanne saying a latte is for her. That's perfect. Now let me reintroduce myself real quickly. My name is John. I am a tour guide in Melbourne, Australia. I started the company Depot Adventures, which you'll see on my hat right over there. But in a prior life, I used to work for SANDEMANs, which is how I ended up doing this thing. So I'm very excited to be showing you guys around the city. I do this every day. I would give groups of 20, 30, 40 people tours of Melbourne, at least when it's not a global pandemic. Today, I'm doing more of these virtual tours, and I've been doing quite a few. If you guys are enjoying this and would like to show your appreciation, the number one thing you can do is click the share button on this video down below and share it out with your friends so we can get a critical mass watching. If you want to do something a little bit lighter, then leave a comment. Just give me a question, tell me hello, tell me where you're watching from, or you can just click like as well. Now there is a link down there where you can leave what you think this tour has been worth. There are absolutely no obligation to do so, so I want you to feel guilt-free about watching this video. But sometimes people ask to leave a tip, and so the link is in the video below the Sandeman stream. And finally, if you'd like to do more of this sort of stuff, you can actually reach out to my page, Depot Adventures. Again, there's my hat. Send me a message on my Facebook page, and I actually do these private tours all day, every day. Yesterday I had private virtual tours at 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 12 a.m., 1 p.m. And so I'd love to see more of you. All right, so questions coming through. Kyle commenting saying hot chocolate at Doughboys is great. Hot chocolate at Doughboys is good, but for me, my favorite hot chocolate, let me show you, we just passed here, Cocoa Black. Right there, they just added this little stand here. Amazing hot chocolates down over that way. Also, Kristen, yeah, we pronounce it Melbourne over here, not even bun, bin, B-I-N. That's how I say it. Excuse the noise, got a street sweeper coming by there. Yeah, Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons is here as well. We have a few Tim Hortons in Melbourne. That's a big one. But we don't like Tim Hortons. We don't like Starbucks. We like our independent cafes down this way. Now over here we have this beautiful building up here. This is called the Melbourne Town Hall. This is where our Lord Mayor works. It's a beautiful Gold Rush era building, and for you 50 who are watching the live stream right now, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm very happy to be able to show you our architecture. Now, there's two main kinds of architecture in Melbourne. We've got Gold Rush architecture, like you see right here, and when I look across the street, you can see the other kind, which is Art Deco. This is the Manchester Unity building, opened in the same year as the Empire State Building. It is a beautiful example of that 20th century architectural style. Right here what I'm seeing, these big spotlights up here, because it's the middle of the Moomba Festival here in Melbourne as we try to get more people back into the city. And something they've been doing is projecting light onto our buildings. So these project this animation up the top. I was in front of the State Library last night and they had all these hearts up there and said, "Welcome back, Melbourne," as they're encouraging people to come and socialize once again. Daniel has several Irish ancestors immigrating by choice in the 1800s. One, my grandmother said, it's at the expense of the crown. That's great. So one of the interesting things about Australia's past is that we're a city built by convicts. We're a country built by convicts. Melbourne is a settled city. Sydney has more of the convict story. But while in the past, if you had convict lineage in your family, you might keep it to yourself. You might not want to tell other people about it. Nowadays, it's a point of pride to say that you had an ancestor on the First Fleet. Kyle says, try to send some friends and customers your way. I might be back in November for a wedding. Beers? Yeah, man, absolutely. Come grab a beer with me. Better yet, hop on one of our tours when you come down. We give these in-person tours. Yesterday, I had my hidden Laneway bar tour that I gave from 3 to 6 p.m. here. Now look over here. This is for people like me. I'm on my phone right now, so I'm not looking at the traffic. So as I walk down this way, uh-oh, flashing red. I have to stop because it's a red light. This is literally what they put up in Melbourne because we had so many people stuck in their phones looking at them. When the lights turn green, then the footpath turns green. See right there? It's a little innovation they put in last year, which is both amazing and sad, all at the same time. Thank you, Patricia. I'm glad you're liking our city over here. Now, if you guys have any comments, questions about Melbourne, please do let me know. I'd love to know what you are interested in this place. Here's the thing that I find most interesting about Melbourne is that we have these amazing trams coming up and down our streets. So you wouldn't be able to tell it from now because I seem to have picked the exact moment when the trams are far, far in the distance. I see one way, way over there. But this is the busiest tram thoroughfare in the world. We have more trams passing down this street, Swanston Street, than anywhere else. Now remember, it is early. It is still, oh gosh, I'm not gonna be able to focus this, but it is still before 8 a.m. It's 7:40 in the morning right now. And so tram's not as common, not as busy right now, but we have the oldest continuously operating tram network in the world here in Melbourne. So you can go up and down our city streets. In the city center, we have the free tram zone, so you don't even have to pay for the trams. Neil asking me if there's any unique foods in Melbourne. I know a few people that would love to live there someday, love to visit someday. Well, I hope you can live there too. We'd love to have you immigrate here. You wouldn't be the only one. We've had 1 million people join our population, so we now are at 5 million here in Melbourne. So for foods, yeah, we have some really interesting foods here. One of the interesting things about Melbourne is we are a hugely diverse, hugely multicultural city. 40% of Melburnians are not originally from Australia. We come from all over the world. And so what Melbourne loves to do is take other cultures and innovate and adapt and change them. And so while the menu at the restaurant might have a name on it that looks like it's from another country, there are some things that are uniquely European. Let me give you an example. If I go to the UK and I want to eat the stereotypical food, I'm gonna get, fish and chips. If I go to the American South, I'm gonna get brisket. If I go to Austria, I'm gonna get some strudel, Apfelstrudel over there. Here in Melbourne, what you're gonna get is a parma, which on the menu is gonna say chicken parmigiana. Chicken parmigiana is an Italian dish, but we have more Italians in Melbourne than anywhere else in the world. We have so many Italians over here that they brought with them this dish, this beautiful light dish, which was a little bit of eggplant with tomato sauce and cheese, all baked in the oven to perfection. It was a perfect prima piatti. Prima piatti is a first course, meant to be the course that comes before the heavy course, the secondi piatti. When Melburnians got it, they kind of misunderstood that, and they thought, you know what, this needs more hulk, more heft. Let's get rid of that eggplant, or aubergine for the Brits watching right now. They took that eggplant, threw it out the window, went to the Germantown, got the biggest hunk of schnitzel they could possibly find, and with that schnitzel, they plopped it on the plate, put the tomato sauce on top, the cheese on top of that, baked it in the oven. They said, we are still not done. And so they got a bunch of chips, or French fries for the Americans, and they put it on a plate. They put it either to the side of the parma or underneath the parma. And today you can have a lot of controversy in Melbourne by arguing with someone about whether the chips go under or to the side of the parma. At this point, they realized, you know what, this is probably too much. We've gone too far, it's not healthy enough, we need to put a little bit more health. And so they got a piece of salad, that big. The salad just goes in the very corner of the plate. There we go, it's healthy now. But let's chuck a beer in for good measure. This is a parma in a pot, the go-to default standard pub food that you will get if you come to Melbourne. Other parts of Australia call it a parmi, but nobody calls it a parmigiana, even though that's what it says on all the menus. That is a very classic Australian food for you. Kyle now saying, Macca's, Hungry Jack's, meat pies. Now I'll take you on your third offer too. Yes, we have McDonald's, which we call Macca's over here. Yes, we have Hungry Jack's, which is what we call Burger King's over here. But if you want to get the essential, authentic Australian things, stick more with the meat pies. Meat pies here you can find all over the place, but are most commonly had at sporting events. We are the capital of the world when it comes to sport over here. We have rugby, Australian rules football, gridiron, baseball, even ice hockey we have here in Melbourne, Australia. The first Olympics that ever took place outside of the USA or Europe were here in Melbourne. And when you go to see the sport, what will you do? You will grab yourself a meat pie. The brand, the mass manufactured brand, is called a 4 and 20 pie. And that's when it'll be a very popular dish for people to get at the sporting events. You get the pie, you put a bit of tomato sauce or ketchup on top of it. Here we call it tomato sauce, and Bob's your uncle. That's a fun little Australian / British expression I learned since being down here. Bob's your uncle is what you say at the end of a list. So just like I did there, you grab your pie, you put the tomato sauce, you grab a seat, Bob's your uncle. So it's like the ending of a list. Now I just want to quickly show you one other kind of food that you can get here, because I love this question that I got about what the good foods are. Over here is our Chinatown. See that Chinese gate there? We actually have the biggest Chinatown, the longest continuously operating Chinatown in the entire world. San Francisco's might be older, but San Francisco had a little bit of an earthquake, which leveled the city, destroyed the Chinatown, and so Melbourne kind of cruelly, if you ask me, comes in and they say our Chinatown is older. Now we had 40,000 Chinese people coming here during the gold rush, and as a result we got some amazing Chinese culture and Chinese food. Dumplings are amazing over here, and it's something that a lot of people will do is go grab a bottle of wine and grab some quick dumplings while they're over here. Kyle writing in saying, fun fact, at the time, the largest crowd ever for a baseball game was at the MCG, I believe at the Olympics, with 100,000 people. That is a great fact. I didn't know that, actually. Thanks for that. I actually have another fun one. It's your knowledge bombs, as I like to say. Knowledge bomb, you ready for it? The largest event ever attended at our big stadium, the Melbourne Cricket Ground, was in 1952. And it was by an American. Now here is 10 points, high five, all the street cred in the world. If you can name for me which American attracted 150,000 people at the MCG. Don't Google it, I want guesses. What is the person that made people get really fired up over here to come see this person? I want to see the guesses down below. Nowadays, it's not uncommon to have 100,000 people attending sporting events, especially for our grand final, which will fill the MCG during non-COVID times. That's the end of the Australian rules football season, which is one of our favorite sports around here. Sinatra is a good guess, Kyle. It's not Sinatra. I think 52, is that before his time? I'm not sure, but I'll give you a hint actually. It's not a musician. Not a musician. So Elvis, not Elvis either. It's, that's one of the other big guesses that I get. It's not Buddy Holly. Have to keep going and go in a different direction than music. What's the only thing that can bring out more people? What's the only subject matter that can get the people going more than music? It's not comedy. It's not theater. There's another thing that people will come from far and wide to come see. Again, the question for you guys just tuning in is which events brought 150,000 people in attendance here in Melbourne in 1952, hosted by an American. Cassius Clay, I like that guess. That is a great guess over there. Muhammad Ali, as he was later known, but it wasn't him. It was an American, though. So points for that. Question over here: is cricket or rugby more popular? Depends on who you're asking. Rugby is actually not very popular in Victoria, the state that we're in right now. We like Australian rules football, or Aussie rules, or AFL. It's a sport that's unique to this part of Australia. We have more teams right here in Melbourne than we do in the rest of Australia. And that's our big sport. But cricket is also a big part of Aussie culture. We have cricket in the summertime, and then Aussie rules football in the wintertime. If you go to New South Wales, that's where Sydney is, or to Queensland, that's where Brisbane is, those are the people that like rugby so much. They have two kinds of it. They've got rugby league and rugby union. There will be a few more moments for people to answer the question here. What event brought 150,000 people here? Another hint for you. Who brings out the people more than music, more than sport, more than theater, more than comedy? Jesus. Jesus brings the people out here. And it's not the Pope either, I'm afraid. Sorry. The answer, because I remember it's an American, to the person who brought out 150,000 people is the Reverend Billy Graham, the televangelist in the US. This used to be quite a religious place. A lot of places that are melting pots for migrants are religious places, because when people go far from home, they go back to their kind of root cultures over here. Nowadays, Australia is quite a secular place. The #1 religion in Australia is atheism, as reported in the last census. And so we've come along, kind of taken a different turn since 1952, but the Reverend Billy Graham is the man who brought all the people out to see him. Camera back around to show you some of our amazing conveniences that we have here. One of the ways that Melbourne shows off its wealth is architecture, like we see over here in the distance. The other way, toilets. The men's toilets just down below us. The whole city has these old toilet blocks down here. And this is a way of, providing conveniences for men, but also showing off our incredible amount of wealth over here. But the really shocking thing for people living in the 19th century in Melbourne, the opulent, over-the-top thing, was this over here, the ladies' public toilets. Why on earth would a city need a ladies' public toilet? That sounds a little bit ridiculous, doesn't it? After all, ladies don't have to leave the house for that long. It's men who need to go to work. The culture at the time is actually that ladies' public conveniences are unnecessary, which of course is ridiculous to us today. But the fact that we have these ladies' toilets here is a testament to the fact that Melbourne had more money than it knew what to do with. $15 billion of gold was found during our gold rush. And that's how we built beautiful buildings like the one you see above me right now. That is the General Post Office, or GPO. It's one of my favorite buildings in the city center. And it is amazing. Now today is an H&M, and so say what you will about it being an H&M. There's some very reasonable and legitimate criticism of commercializing our historic buildings like this, but I'm going to come into defense of it. Because if it wasn't an H&M, what would it be? An apartment? Municipal offices? Torn down even? By putting commercial properties in here, we let people walk in here into the H&M and see our historic buildings anytime they want to. And so when the H&M opens in just a couple of hours, I'll be able to walk through that door and see one of our most beautiful and historic buildings. It's a significant building as well, because as we look up here, that clock tower has a flagpole on the top of it, and the flagpole is the official center of Melbourne. When you drive over to Melbourne, you drive on the highway, it tells you how many kilometers away you are from this place, and it's measuring from that flagpole. Looking down here on Bourke Street Mall, this is our big pedestrian shopping strip over here, so it's no traffic allowed here. The Myer is the shopping department store. This has 7 stories of shopping in it, this beautiful Art Deco building that we have. And it's a great place to come and visit, come into the big smoke, that's what we call the big city over this way. And it's a good place to go for some shopping. But for now, what I want to do is head up a hill. So something you'll notice here is we have Elizabeth Street going this way, and then you'll notice the slight gradual slope going up the way. That's because we are at the lowest point of the Melbourne city center. Looking up our skyline here, you can see our big high rises down that way. But when it rains here in Melbourne, this whole intersection will flood. It's kind of annoying because, like, literally when it's pouring down with rain, you cannot get across this crosswalk. You have to walk into the center of the street to try to avoid some of the rain around here. That's because when our cities were designed in the 1800s, there's a big problem that they had, which was that the roadways were used for sewage. People would literally just put their raw sewage in the streets. That would then make its way down to our rivers, and the William Creek, which used to go right down here on Elizabeth Street, ended up being a place where there's a lot of disease around. So what do? We move our rivers underground. William Creek is now under my feet right now, and there are bluefinned eels that have this as their ancestral breeding grounds. They'll commute from Queensland, way over on the other side of the country, all the way down to Melbourne, and they'll look for this little creek where they bred all those years ago. and they won't be able to find it. In fact, it is not in Melbourne to see blue-finned eels just trying to crawl across the ground, looking in desperation for William Creek. Some of them make it into the sewer as the population continues, but a lot do not. And it's one of the little pieces of evidence that we have here that we are but a blip on the radar in Melbourne, Australia. 1835 is when Melbourne begins, but the human history of this country goes back as far as possibly 120,000 years ago. A very old civilization here, the Aboriginal Australians. And until 1835, this land was constantly rejuvenating over here. But now, when the English come in, we have lots of flat surfaces because we have buildings which are very valuable, worth a lot of money. And so what do? We protect these buildings around here by putting our rivers underground and damaging our environment. So we're trying to be a bit more conscious of that nowadays. I do want to make sure I'm not missing any comments, so I just want to say, see here, Kyle saying he was working today. The guy drove in the crowds on Burke Street. That was an awful day, wasn't it? The Burke Street Massacre, as we call it now, happened in January 2017. Crazy guy, high on drugs, just plowed through a bunch of people on Burke Street. Really shook the city up. In fact, nowadays we have all these barriers around preventing cars from doing that same thing. Teague says the historical buildings are what's most important. They can never be replaced. I like that thinking. And hi, Crazy Syrup Guy as well. Thank you for tuning in to Melbourne, Australia. So yeah, the buildings can never be replaced, and yet they are being replaced. The Heritage Council, their job is to assess buildings' historic value, but I guarantee you that this McDonald's is not part of our 1800s structure of Melbourne. Sometimes what happens with the Heritage Council is they'll allow for a building to be torn down, but they leave the facade or the front of the building up. And then they say, put the high-rise up behind the facade and leave the facade up. And it'll basically be the same thing, right? Now you can judge for yourself whether you think that's right or wrong. You might be hearing my opinion come out here, but let me give you an example of what facading looks like. So as I flip our camera around here, we have this beautiful building, historic building right here. We have this beautiful historic building over here as well. And as I move back across the street, let's look at what's in between the two. In between these two beautiful historic buildings, we look up and up and up and up and up. This is under construction, this building right now. And it was allowed to go up only if they protected these two buildings. So you can see this building is actually overhanging this other historic building right here. And this is what happens when the Heritage Council has a lot of financial influence being pressed on it by the government. Because again, we've grown by 1 million people in the last 10 years. And so that means that there's a lot of money coming in here, lots of opportunity, lots of private interests. And so there's a little bit of a tussle about, do we want to be a city like Singapore or like Shanghai with beautiful glass, modern buildings everywhere? Or do we want to protect some of our heritage? That's a question that we're debating in every city in the world. It doesn't matter where you are. So now we're coming up to the intersection of Burke Street, which is right here, and Queen Street right here. Fun fact about Melbourne, our streets are easy to remember because they follow this little nomenclature. It goes King William, Queen Elizabeth, King Street, William Street, Queen Street, Elizabeth Street, boom, 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 boom. And the reason we're coming up here, can you guys see that building there? That's my office. I work there. So Depot Adventures headquarters is down over there. And that's also where I'm gonna be heading to give my virtual tour right after this. I'm on a virtual tour with all of you people, but what I've been doing is most of my lockdown is giving private virtual tours. And so I'm actually giving one, if you can believe it, a whiskey tasting tour in just a moment. That does mean I'm gonna have to start wrapping things up, but I do wanna say a few things for you. Let me make sure I don't miss any questions. Kyle says, how's the progress on the pants building going? Pants building, did it say pants building on there? I missed it. Anyway, let me just quickly say a few things. Number one, thank you guys for joining the stream. I wanna end this now because you always wanna leave them wanting some more, right? If you guys have enjoyed this, there's a few things you can do. Invite me back. You guys have the power to invite me back. My intern, Chris, is working on this right now. You might know him as Chris Sandeman, and he's moderating the event. But if you guys like this, leave a comment right now. Say, I like this. I want John to give more tours of Melbourne because I have to impress Chris in order to get on some more streams here. And I think we can pull it off, but I just need to show some support. Also, if you can share this stream, just because it's live now, doesn't mean that it won't be available in the future. And so your friends will see this. If you share it now, it will be helping us out tremendously. Yes, Amber, it is a whiskey tasting at 7 a.m., although it's really 8 a.m. now, so you know, it's okay. It's for Americans, so it's for them, it's later. This is my job, this is what I do. Also, if you've enjoyed this stream, the best thing you can do is you guys watching it on the Sandeman stream will see a link down below to give a tip, and you can pay whatever you think this has been worth to you. If it's been worth anything at all, that's one of the ways that we make our living here. I used to be a tour guide of Sandeman, so I used to rely fully on people paying what they felt the tour was worth. And so you're invited to do that right now. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for coming. I really hope that you guys have enjoyed this. Question now is, how can people book me for a private virtual experience? Look out for me on Facebook. Depot Adventures is the name. Look up Depot Adventures on Facebook and send me a private message, and I can tell you all about how to book me for a private virtual experience over there. And yeah, Kyle says you learned a few nice facts, so good. Glad to hear it. Please guys, any more questions that you have, put them in the feed. I will answer them after I end this stream. I'll hit reply on those and I will let you know. But thank you so much and have a lovely day. Bye-bye.